I knew you'd be back. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the second part of this video for this wonderful reflective essay, Little Things Are Big. Here's one of the questions that matches it. But first, you might be thinking, what does this question have to do with this emoji? And what emotion goes with this emoji, right? Let's take a moment and go through these questions together. Part A. What is the meaning of insensitive in the following quotation from Little Things Are Big? I passed on by her as if I saw nothing, as if I was insensitive to her need, like a rude animal walking on two legs. I just moved on, half running by the long subway platform, leaving the children in the valise and her with the baby on her arm. Ooh, what does insensitive mean there? Not caring about her need. That's our correct answer, right? And what's proof of that? Well, let's take a look down at these examples down here. Passed on by her as if I saw nothing. I mean, that's pretty insensitive, right? But you're still pretending as if. Like a rude animal walking on two legs, half running by leaving the children, the valise, and her, right? I think D is kind of close, but B, like a rude animal walking on two legs, right? Not even sensitive to it, not even noticing it. All right, so C and B are the correct answers there, right? Now, let's take a moment and talk about parallelism because we've got some here, right? Parallelism is when they repeat sentence structures to make the text easier to read and understand. I passed by her as if I saw nothing. As if I. There's that repetition, right? Same exact structure and sound, right? So, as if I saw nothing, as if I was insensitive to her need. There's that parallelism, right? And I'm guessing that's an insensitive emoji. All right. Let's take a moment and read through this. Parallelism is when authors repeat sentence structures to make their text easier to read and understand. Analyze 3 examples of parallelism in Little Things Are Big and use evidence from the text to support your analysis. Here's their answer. All right, please put your 3 examples here, 3 examples there. Notice they're almost exactly the same, right? 3 examples of parallelism in Little Things Are Big include the mother's repeated questions, comma, the repetition of the word courtesy, comma, and repetition of the white mother's family and baggage. One example of parallelism. So this is one whole body paragraph, right? One of 3 of parallelism in Little Things Are Big includes the author's repeated questions. The author is observing a white woman in the mid 1950s struggling with her children and bag. He acknowledges that she needs help, but is aware that his social status as a Puerto Rican brown man might cause a negative reaction from her, a member of the dominant class. Quote, or would she think that I was just trying to get too familiar? Or would she think worse than that, perhaps? What would I do if she let out a scream as I went toward her to offer my help? Was I misjudging her? So many slanders or lies are written every day in the daily press against the blacks and Puerto Ricans. This, here's our noun, repetition of questions, here's our verb, helps the reader to put themselves in this conflicted moment. If these questions were not one after the other, then the intimate pattern of the narrator's thoughts would be less understandable. This important technique, parallelism, which is the repetition of sentence structures, helps to make this personal essay easier to read and understand. Take a moment and line up your, come on, you mouse, light bulb and check mark. And I want you to use these to find an example of parallelism. Then find a part that you don't quite understand and put a question mark next to it. Let's take the time to annotate now. Welcome back. All right. So let's take a moment and continue to break down this body paragraph. All right. Your job, in case you forgot, is to read the read parts out loud on Vocaroo and then answer the question out loud. And the question is, what about the analysis in the TDA paragraph do you appreciate? What do you think is a good point that they have? You don't have to use what's underlined in red, but I'd like you to tell me what you appreciate about this student's response to the prompt that they need to analyze 3 examples of parallelism. All right, please open a Vocaroo and then go ahead and take care of the Vocaroo on this page. Let's do it. All right, welcome back. So together, we're going to break down this paragraph, which is we've been breaking down nonstop. And this time, we're going to kind of give us a little visual piece. So we're going to know this body paragraph inside and out, just like we know this prompt inside and out. All right, let's start by switching it over to highlighter, make it a little bit smaller, and then go with orange. Parallelism is when authors repeat sentence structures to make their text easier to read and understand. Analyze 3 examples of parallelism in Little Things Are Big. Use evidence from this text to support your analysis. There's the word analysis, and there's the word analyze. One example of parallelism in Little Things Are Big includes the author's repeated questions. All right. This is a parallelogram, right? So I'm going to connect this parallelogram to parallelism. And then underneath that, you see an idea and a question mark. Well, we have these repeated questions here. We're still talking about parallelism. So I'm going to put a block around this and connect it to parallelism. And I'm going to connect it to repeated questions. And I'm going to switch to blue. The author is observing a white woman in the mid-1950s struggling with her children and bag. So already, it's a contrast. White woman, it possibly in need of help, and black man thinking, should he step in to help? He acknowledges that she needs help, but is aware that his social status as a Puerto Rican brown man might cause a negative reaction from her, right? And you can see that negative reaction right here. Negative reaction. From her, a member of the dominant class. So, quote, or would she think that I was trying to get too familiar? Let's switch over to green, right? And we're going to get her evil looking eyes there. Or would she think worse than that? Would she let out a scream? Now I'm going to circle the screaming mouth. Was I if I toward her to offer my help, was I misjudging her? So many blacks and Puerto Ricans. So many slanders are written every day in daily press against the blacks and Puerto Ricans, right? So what is he trying to do? Switch over to purple. He's trying to help her out, right? To offer my help, to be courteous. And here, over here's a ton of courtesy. This repetition of questions. Let's go ahead with red down here. This repetition of questions helps the reader to put themselves in a conflicted moment. If these questions were not one after the other, then the intimate pattern of the narrator's thoughts would be less understandable. This important technique, parallelism, back to orange, which is the repetition of sentence structures, helps to make this personal essay easier to read and understand. Do they talk about questions? They do. Repetition of questions is part of the analysis here. And they say that the repetition makes it, if they hadn't included, then it would be less understandable, right? It's an if and then. Good. Take a moment and make sure that your slide looks just like Mr. Surface's. All right. Please take the time now to fast forward to the slide that has the TDA. Whoops. Slide 28. And we're going to take some notes here about parallelism. So let's go ahead and write parallelism notes. All right. So obviously, if you don't have a computer, you'll be writing these down. But for those of us with computers, now is the time. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples of parallelism, what it is and isn't, and some famous examples. Let's start with repetition versus parallelism. Repetition is a rhetorical device that involves the repetition of the same word, phrase, or sentence. Parallelism is a literary device that juxtaposes two or more similar syntactic constructions. Well, let's get that phrase, syntactic constructions. First, write syntax, which is the structure of language. Right? Syntax is a noun. Then you can write syntactic, which is an adjective. That means relating to the structure of language. It's a repetition, and repetition refers to the repetition of words, phrases, or clauses. Parallelism refers to the repetition of structure. Let's look at an example real quick. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It's not precisely the same words, notice, right? But there are a similar syntax, right? So let's go ahead and write this famous parallelism down in our essay. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Example: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Take a moment, please, and go ahead and write these notes. All right. Let's look at one last example, another from Dr. King. This one is from the speech you're memorizing. It's from the I Have a Dream speech. I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Right? That's repetition, but repetition to hammer home that he has a dream and that he's using it to keep track of the present and future. Let's go ahead and copy that down. And here's how I do it. I go up to the address bar, I press backspace, and I'm going to copy down the I have a dream. Then I go dot, 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 and I'm going to put I have a dream today, period. Then I press Control A, then Control X. I go over here, and write it down right underneath. Take about 20 seconds to copy that down. Go ahead. Great job.